So something that's always bothered me about representation in current media is the way black men are being represented. I recently stumbled upon the podcast, if you can really call it that, of one Bobby Altov. Um, and I'm just here to give you my feelings about it. Now, if you're someone who's familiar with Bobby's content, you probably already know the deadpan humor, just like the entire antisocial personality um, that she plays in the interviews. That's why I say I don't really know if it's like an interview or really like a podcast. It's kind of like a show, right? It's kind of like a show. What kind of show it is, do you ask? Well, I'll let you decide that. I just want to say some of the things that I find egregious about it. One of the biggest issues that I have with media and representation in media for people in general is because the media that we consume, the information that we process in our noggins here in our brain actually helps us socialize into whatever kind of person we're going to be. I know a lot of people like to say that people's characteristics are predetermined, but actually, in fact, there's a lot of socialization that goes into determining the person's particular characteristics. That's why you see a lot of men are narcissistic. This is just due to the narcissistic tendencies that is caused by a capitalist society, and men being the most profitable, the most privileged group within the patriarchy does give them, the most, socialization towards narcissism. I'm not going to say too much about the similarities between narcissism and masculinity in our current society today, but today I wanted to talk about caricatures in media, specifically topic today is going to be Bobby Altov. Now, Bobby made her success by interviewing a few very prominent black men. I'll give you a short list: Offset, Drake, Lil Yachty. You'd also interview Mark Cuban. That was an interesting one. But I wanted to talk about specifically the interviews with the black men. I don't care about Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban, you can suck my ass. Right off the bat, the visual representation that is used, because I believe it is a show, right? It gives you like what narrative is being portrayed in this particular situation, because ultimately the issue that I have is what kind of socialization is going to be derived from consuming this kind of content. When I look at this particular picture, it makes me wonder, what is the purpose of having this interview in a bed? To the best of my knowledge, at this particular point, Bobby was married, and I'm not, I'm all for funsies, but I don't think it's work appropriate to be in the bed with one of your co-workers in that particular kind of situation. And I previously mentioned the dangerous personality types that are socialized into men in our society. So, and I personally do not think that is a good representation to give people at this current time. Now, this particular visual here makes me very uncomfortable due to the unfortunate reality of over-sexualization of black men in our community, especially not our community, in white community, especially dark-skinned black men, which I happen to belong to. So maybe there's a bit of a trauma there that I am projecting onto that scene, but nonetheless, it was still a very uncomfortable encounter to observe. And all through that interview with Offset, I observed that he was a bit reluctant to be cordial with her on certain topics. In fact, there were a lot of situations where he would repeat the question that she had asked him back to her, and she would immediately become defensive and refuse to participate in the conversation, showing that she had been asking a question that she herself would not be interested in answering. Now, if you've watched the entire video up until this point and your concern is, why do you care so much? It's just a bit that she's doing. It's just a gimmick, right? I'm very much aware that it's a gimmick, right? There's interviews that she's done that she says it's a gimmick.
Well, this has been a wild ride for you. Talk to us about this podcast.
I got the idea in April to start a podcast, and I've always kind of done this character, which is just dry humor, and I was like, I'm just going to bring her along for a podcast.
So when you interview these people, you're not Bobby necessarily.
No, yeah, I'm just like a really dry person.
I mean, that's such an interest.
Now that we are on the understanding that it was a gimmick, my question still stands as why did you choose that gimmick? What kind of show were you trying to put on Bobby Althoff? I have questions.